Okay, woohoo, we are here. I am so excited for today because I have like one of my favorite people in the realms of consciousness, in the field of consciousness. Her name is Karen Swain. And I want to just give you a bio introduction, but we're going to chat. She and I have already been chatting for like an hour and 40 minutes because when we get together, we just go. We're like, I just love her. You're going to love her too. So let me introduce her to you. Her name again is Karen Swain, and it's spelled like Karen, but it's K-A, capital K-A, Karen Swain. And her website is karenswain.com. She's a teacher of deliberate creation. She's a spiritual teacher, mentor, educator, galactic guide, radio podcast host for ATP Media. And her podcast is on ATP Media. She's an author, an inspirational speaker, and facilitator of consciousness and conscious events, seminars, and conferences. Karen enlightens you to the power of your thoughts and beliefs and how they create your reality and how to live in alignment with your emotional guidance system. She offers guidance on a cosmic scale and helps you to remember your connection with spiritual teams, your multidimensional selves, and higher wisdom, as well as who you are and why you're here to help you in this world. You are going to love her just like I do. Karen, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Gorgeous one. Great to be with you.
I just love you. I'm just so happy to be with you. I love the relationship that we have. Let's just say your podcast again, because it's really good. I've been a guest on it. It's Awakening and Expanding Consciousness on ATP Media. And what did you say? It stands for All Things Positive?
No, I like that too. All things positive. Accentuate the positive. We have a telco here that used that old song. It's an old gospel song. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. Doot, doot. Anyway, it's an old jazz song. They used to sing it in gospel back in the 20s. And and anyway, so Telco really used it on their ads. And when I was finding a name for my radio show, because I was on mainstream radio, like when you listen in the car, I wanted to sort of dumb down the teachings of deliberate creation so people can understand it, like accentuating the positive. It's not called be positive because sometimes you just can't be positive, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in your stuff, you can't be positive, but you can accentuate like what's good about this. I remember I've got this story I tell, being in the car with my second husband, and I was pissed off with him for some reason, and he threw my words back in my face. And he's like, say something that you love about me or something nice about me. And when you're in your stuff, I'm like, I can't find anything I like about you. I can't find anything I love. But if I can accentuate the positive, what can I find that feels better than I fucking hate you right now, right? And that is, well, I'm pleased you're driving the car because I'm so angry that if I was driving the car, I'd probably crash it. Like that's accentuating the positive. It's not being loving and then you can move incrementally out of that space of I hate you to I love you, and moving into a place of appreciation. Yeah, it's really nice the way you look after me like that, and you do drive the car. I don't have to drive myself around all the time. Like you can move out of that space. You can accentuate till you're back to a place. It only took me about 5 minutes to go, oh my God, I love you so much. I just lost that whole I hate you story that I was, engaging in at the time. So yeah, the name of the show was Accentuate the Positive. And Awakening and Expanding Consciousness I added later, because when I started podcasting and we were going places, I didn't have to dumb it down for a mainstream audience anymore. Like we could go there, I sort of added that expanding and awakening consciousness component without necessarily changing the name of the podcast. But yeah, Laurie's been on and I just love her. I reached out to her again this year because I had you on a couple of years ago, and I just remember thinking, God, I love that conversation with Laurie. Let me reach out to her and put her back on, because now we're on syndicated radio, reaching about 450 live listeners per show.
That's awesome.
And I know. And so I've sort of been reaching out to people.
Wait, 450? Isn't it like 450,000?
Oh, did I not say that? 450,000. Did I not say the 1,000 part? Yeah.
1,000 part. but I knew it was true.
Apparently the network, reaches about 30 million people. That's according to Joe, the guy that started the network. I don't know how honest that is, but that's what he reckons. And there are some shows that reach about 3 million. But anyway.
Well, first tell people, okay, so I read your bio, but tell people, what do you want people to know, or what do you want to start with? Because we were going in 5 million different directions. We were talking about divine truth. We were talking about inclusion. We were talking about how to discern authentic or inauthentic, or truth from non-truth, or where do you want to start? Or do you want to just share a little bit
we've been everywhere. We should have had the recording going the whole time we've been yakking, but yeah, we've been everywhere, discerning. We've had this conversation, but it's worth repeating it while we're recording. Like, what is truth? I mean, what is one truth to another? And you said very strongly, this is worth recording, that there is only one truth, ultimate truth, and then it doesn't come from belief. Like, do you want to say what you said?
Well, I didn't say that there was only one truth. What I said was, okay, truth is always someone's perspective, but absolute truth is absolutely true regardless of whether someone believes it or not. So we make up our truths based on our perspective, and then we experience reality based on what we believe and perceive and what we think is true. So if a person doesn't believe in God, and for example, or if they're like, an atheist, they get to have that reality, and reality will conform to them, and that will become true for them. And that's their truth. But that does not make it absolutely true. So, like, absolute truth does not require belief. Absolute truth does not need someone to believe it in order for it to be absolutely true. And there are absolute truths. For example, you are consciousness. We are consciousness. Now, you don't have to believe that. So while lots of truths are always changing based on human consciousness and the evolution of consciousness and the expansion of consciousness, there are some absolute truths that are absolutely true, and it doesn't matter if you believe them or not. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And as you were saying that, the guides were saying this, this is true, I suppose, but we are incarnate in an environment where we get to create. We come as creators. We are creator beings. We get to create our truth, and we can hold steadfast to this being the truth. Like, truth is perspective. So when you die, you obviously reemerge back to pure positive energy, and you can find different truths. But while we're here incarnate, we have this playground. We've got this playground to play with that we don't have in other dimensions or on other planets or in other realms, where we've got this vast array of vibratory frequency we can play with. So we can create, as creator beings, the most hellish experience, or the most beautiful and expansive. Like, there are no limits. I was saying to Laurie before that years ago in my 20s, I read the Seth books, and Seth said in those books, channeled by a woman in the 60s called Jane Roberts, there are only two rules to life. One is you create your own reality, and two, there are no limits. So that no limits, there is no limit to how much trauma you can create or how much love you can create. Like, there's no limits either way. And so in this vibratory experience called planet Earth, we've got this vaster range of vibrational frequencies we can play with. And we get stuck. Like, we create according to what we believe. Sure, there is truth beyond belief, but while we're incarnate in the physical realm and having a physical experience, our beliefs are creating our reality.
So true. Can I tell you, the last time we were chatting, you said something to me that I love so much around the whole idea of like creating our reality. You were talking about your guides and your team, and you said something like, when there's things that are too complicated, I just tell them, oh, go take care of that. Like, go take care of that. Will you share about that? Because that was like an eye opener for me. I so enjoyed when you shared that, because I started using it. Like, I can't be bothered with this. Can you just take care of that? Share more about that.
Well, I think the conversation that we were having was about mastery. And you were saying that, you wanted to manifest some things in your life and you had to be very masterful. Because I think that, Esther Hicks spoke about this too. They used to call their work the science of deliberate creation. And then they found so many people getting so upset that they were having a negative thought, and then they were trying to get in their heads about how to get out of their negative thinking. And people were getting all really distressed at the science of deliberate creation. So they changed their teachings byline to the art of allowing. And what came through when we were speaking was that you said, I want to be in my mastery. So I want to be masterful about how I think in order to create. And again, I felt like you were kind of getting all too up in the details of how manifestation happens. And so what the guides came through, and it was a moment for me too. It's not like I didn't know it as truth, but they explained it in a way which I thought, wow, that's really cool. Because they explained it in a way where I was seeing it. They said that you create through the structure,
Yes.
the architecture, if you like, of your dominant belief system, or as God through the Neil Donald Walsh books called it, the sponsoring thought, like the foundational thought. So we have this sponsoring, this foundational belief structure, an architectural structure that is the dominant way that manifestation happens. The little thoughts that come and go, like I'm pissed off at him, I love that, I hate that, we're up and down all the time. They're not necessarily creating in your experience. What's creating in your experience is the structure of the belief system. So if you believe that you're not taken care of, that the world is a hostile place, no matter how positive you try to be, that's what you'll create. Or if you believe that the universe adores you and is sorting out all the details and is looking after you, and everything that comes to you comes for you, for your spiritual growth, because you are ultimately loved and adored, then that's how you create. So you can get pissed off and worried and critical, and we can have a great old time.
Because Karen, I was saying something like it's really hard to constantly be perfect with your thoughts. And that's what I was like. You have to
don't need
so masterfully. That's what I was saying. You have to be so masterful. And when you said, I just let them sort it out. And then what came through was, your overall dominant belief system. That's what came through the guides while we were talking. Your dominant belief system has to be that everything sorts itself out, or that everything works out in the best ways possible. Then you can have the latitude to not have every thought be perfect.
Exactly.
And that was so freeing for me. And I just want to say, it's not often that somebody it's going to sound a little arrogant, but it's not often that somebody can give me something where I'm like, oh, that was so good. Because usually
I get it.
Because there's just so many people. I mean, when you're progressed, there's so many people who will hand you stuff where you're like, okay, I've heard that. Like, that's 20 years. So I heard that 20 years ago. I don't need to hear that, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your 101 lesson, but that's not that helpful to me. But when you gave me that, I was like, well, the guides came through I was like, that is so good. That not only can you just trust that your dominant belief system overall is what it's going to be the main architecture of how you create.
Right.
You also said that whole thing about sort it out, like let the guides sort it out.
Let the universe sort it out. The universe is handling the details. Let them sort it out. Like my dominant belief system now hasn't always been, but now is that everything that happens to me is happening for me, that I am loved and adored, that I am an extension of source energy, that this world is a playground. It's just based in love and appreciation. And so when stuff happens that I don't like, or when I'm trying to get something I want, I sort of leave the details up to the universe. Like, will you sort that out? Because I have to say that I didn't always believe that. I wanted to believe that. I heard that concept channeled through the Esther Hicks Abraham teachings. And I wanted to believe that that was my truth, but I didn't. But as you get older and you see the miracle of life, like how stuff happens, you start to, it's almost like we have to see it to believe it. You start to see that, wow, even when everything went wrong, it was really. So, for instance, so many stories. I wanted to rent, because we were talking about finding a new place, and I was living in a house of a friend, and she said, I need you to move out because I'm going to move in, whatever. And I wanted to live in a beautiful place, and I saw this house that was for sale on the internet, a few months before, and I remember drooling over it saying, oh, it'd be so nice to live there. Too expensive, millions of dollars, don't have the money. And then at the time we were kind of being thrown out of our house again. It was for rent, again, too expensive. But a whole lot of things happened where there was a flat underneath it and 2 stories above it. And the place had been rented by the time we went to look at it. And then I rang the owner because I'd met the owner just to say, thank you for showing me your house. And she said it had fallen through and we'd rented downstairs, but still needed tenants for the upstairs. And we could afford that. So I got the house of my dreams, sort of all miraculously happened. But the owner turned out to be this nightmare of a person. She moved in eventually downstairs. She abused her children. She set the police on me. Like a whole lot of terrible things happened in this beautiful house. But it taught me about unconditional love. Like I remember reading a guru being abused by one of his followers. And he said to the follower, I thank you for your gift of anger, but I don't accept it. I give it back to you. And I remember thinking to myself, if only I could be like that. If only I could not get engaged with somebody else's anger and not see that it's about me and get all up in my upset and just be at that place of peace where the anger is purely coming from the belief system of the other person. It's got nothing to do with me. I had never experienced that until this homeowner had sort of blocked the driveway. My husband couldn't get to work. And I walked outside. She's sitting on the front of a car and she's saying, you are my enemy. Like she's spewing this hideousness at me. And I remember going into full compassion for this woman and thinking, oh my God, she thinks that the world is against her. Just seeing the sponsoring thought, because she was a funny, interesting person. We got on really well, but the sponsoring thought was creating this chaos in her life. Like she was manifesting money and houses and stuff, but she was also manifesting, oh my God, so much chaos in her life. And I could see the sponsoring thought, and it's like, it's me against the world. Everyone is out to get me. Everyone is going to rip me off, sort of thing. And I could see this in this woman. I just felt this compassion for her. And I said to her, Camilla, you don't need to fight the world. The world does not hate you, because everybody eventually became her enemy. And she still threw us out of the house, but it gave me this powerful lesson and something I had asked for, that if I couldn't see that the anger coming from somebody else was about me and how I had done something wrong, because I think as children, when we get reprimanded, we go into, I've done something wrong. We can hold that for the rest of our lives. When somebody gets angry, we're like, what have I done wrong? It's me. I've done something terrible. And we blame ourselves. And that can be, that can be a lifelong, that can be many lives that we try to get over that. But when you can really see into another person and you see that what they're upset about has nothing to do with you, it's so freeing like that. And so, yeah, everything.
That definitely is like a mastery thing, because that's not easy to do. Like that's why that guy was whoever that guru was, because a real guru, once you've really developed your energy field and you really have anchored into the energy that's what I call your core resonance, then somebody else coming at you with hatred or some other energy really wouldn't affect you, because you are an elevated being in your own frequency, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That's a sign of a guru. That's very cool. But I love that you shared that. So what would you say though, in terms of the dominant belief systems and dominant structure that one would have? Like, what about when somebody is just so anchored into some kind of belief, like some of the most like difficult belief systems and structures to overcome are those ones like nothing ever works for me, or I don't get what I want, or no matter what I do, it's not going to happen for me, or I've tried everything and nothing works. Like those are really deeply anchored structural belief systems. And when somebody's carrying those, they're buying into that and their reality is reflecting that. And then it could be pretty like depressing and bleak, like what would you say about that? Because you can't go through that stuff,
Yeah. Well, the sponsoring thought of all sponsoring thoughts, I was thinking about this because I had someone reach out to me yesterday about the riots happening in LA. And she wanted to put out a message of peace and, and try to sort of offset the anger that's being, and I channeled this message, which I popped on my Facebook page that I can't find right now. But the sponsoring thought of all sponsoring thoughts that creates all the drama in the world. Yeah, I was thinking about the people rioting. It's like with powerful desire comes powerful action. When you feel like you can't have what you want, that's when you get out on the streets and start rioting. And then there are people saying that there are people being paid to create dissent, the unrest, and they're being paid. They're like paid actors that are getting out there and egging on the crowd and creating this stuff. They've said that about every riot. But even those people who are paid to create chaos are still wanting something. Like obviously they're wanting money, right? Because they're getting paid to do something they wouldn't do. So everyone negative act is based on one thought, and that is that I can't have what I want. I can't have what I want, so I'm going to get upset about it and do something about it.
Oh
But
my
the
God.
sponsoring,
You just let that's so good. I can't have what I want. Like
yeah,
say that again. Every negative thought, the sponsoring thought or the architecture in there is I can't have what I want. So there's a
yeah.
negative. So
With every upset, the belief is I can't have what I want.
I can't have what I want, right? So that's what
Ultimately, what we want is we want that reconnection to source, to love, to feeling peace. And so the sponsoring thought, the first thought that tears us away, that creates all negativity in the world, is that I am separate to my source.
right.
So if I can't have what I want, it means that I am separate to what I want. And what I want, everything you want, you think in the having of it, you'll feel good, right? If I get what I want, I'll feel good. I'll feel at peace. I'll feel satisfied. I'll feel like I've made a difference. I'll feel whatever it is that you're looking for. I'll feel loved. I'll feel heard. I'll feel understood. I'll feel celebrated. I'll feel. And all that you want comes down to that connection to your source, because we come from a world, a realm, the truth, the only truth of pure positive energy. We come from love. And then we come into this environment of contrast. And in order to have the playground that we have, to have the experiences that we have, we need to separate from that love. So the illusion that we are separate from love. So that idea of I am separate is the sponsoring thought of every other negative thought. I am separate to God. I'm separate to love. I'm separate to my power to create what I want. I'm separate to what I want. It is that feeling of separation. And that's what all the light workers and the light weavers and the star seeds and the spiritual masters are trying to address when we teach people about that reconnection to source, that deliberate creation.
Let me ask you a question. And I know I just interrupted you. Oh, sorry. I just looked for my dog because I realized I haven't seen her for so long. Let me ask you, in what cases, this goes back to the question of truth versus not truth. What if a person, based on their own soul's agenda or soul's contract, for example, can't have something they want? Is there ever a time when that's true?
No,
Never.
never.
Why not? I love that you're saying.
Because everything you want, you think in the having of it, will be an emotion that comes with it. An emotion, a frequency, an energy, a feeling is available regardless of your circumstances.
Okay, well,
So
let's just use some example. Let's say somebody has been unhealthy, physically unwell there for a
right,
big part of their life, and they
right,
just have lived for so long being physically unwell, and they just don't know that they can ever get well. Or let's give another example. Somebody has wanted for their whole life to fall in love with an amazing partner, and they've lived for so long without anyone in their life. So, and they've cleared everything in the way, but they just still feel that it's just not available to them. Then the dominant thought is it's not available to me, or I can't have what I want.
right.
What if that's true in this lifetime?
But look at what you want. Like, why do you want someone to love you?
Well, maybe somebody just wants to get healthy, physically well.
Why do you want to get physically well? What does that give you?
What do they want when that's the case?
Yeah. Like when I'm well, I will feel happier, healthier, more vibrant,
Better.
better, successful. Like all that is available to you through that reconnection with your source. All of it is available. Like you
So
don't
you
need
don't
to,
think there's
and
ever a case where the soul or the aspect of that being has in some way contracted or agreed to go through the not having of what they want just to experience the not having?
sure. Yeah. I
Well,
think
then in
that
that
that's what
case, it's not available.
it's always available. Let me give you an extreme example. So in 1995, I did an Anthony Robbins workshop in Hawaii. And one of the speakers, and I forget his name, was a man that was imprisoned in the Vietnam war for 7 years, and his prison cell was about the size of a coffin. It was about 3 foot tall and about 6 foot long. So he could sit up, but they ate and defecated and they lived in this environment. I think they let them out of their cells maybe once a week or once a day, I don't know, to walk around a yard. But they were not allowed to speak to each other. And brilliantly, like the creators that we are, the prisoners developed their own Morse code to communicate with each other. I mean, incredible. But in this environment, which was the most hideous environment you could ever imagine living in, like just imagine that, he said he found bliss. He found nirvana. He found enlightenment because his physical experience circumstances were so heinous. He couldn't rely on that giving him what he wanted to feel good, which is what we do as human. My physical circumstances need to change. I need to get healthy. I need to have the lover. I need to have the success, the money, the holiday, the good friends, the like whatever we're asking for. So he went to the mind and he went to consciousness, and he could leave his body at will and fly through the cosmos and have this feeling of peace and freedom and expandedness and love. And like, you know, he learned to master his mind and he found bliss. And so when he left that experience, he became quite a religious man, but he also became a speaker, and he was a speaker at the 1995 Anthony Robbins Metaphysical Mastery in Hawaii that I was at, talking about the prison cell of the mind. He said, I was let out of jail, but I was already out of jail years before they let me out of physical jail. And we can have the most beautiful circumstances, but still be locked in a jail cell of our mind. And that was his speech about the jail cell, the jail that we put ourselves in. And so when we believe we cannot have what we want, we literally put ourselves in this mental jail of suffering. Yeah. And the key is the heart. Like, send your heart back to God. That will open the jail cell of the mind. Whew, this is going to make me cry. So, yeah, it's all possible. Mastering it is the journey. And we might spend lifetimes trying to master that. I'm not saying you can do it tomorrow or do it overnight. I'm saying this is the journey we come for. We come into these contrasting experiences to see if we can unlock that jail cell of our that mental jail cell that we're in. I mean, inside of what you don't want, can you still find freedom? Can you still find joy? Can you still find love? There are gurus that have experiences. There's a guru, Indian guru called Amachi, who's the hugging mother.
Yes, I love her.
Apparently, when she hugs you, she takes on all your illness.
I've been hugged by her.
Yeah, I've been hugged a couple of times by her.
And incredible.
Wow. And when the doctors examine her, she is running through her physical body, kidney disease and liver disease and lung disease. Like, she's running all these physical ailments through her physical body. But in no way, shape, or form is she suffering. It's like she takes on this energy, she runs it through her body, you know, her kidneys break down, her liver breaks down, and then they get better. She doesn't suffer over it. And you know, like, can you be sick and love yourself anyway? Love your body? Can you love your circumstances? Like, is life happening to you or for you? This is that sponsoring thought that I have developed. Everything that happens as a part of my soul's request, as a part of my asking to expand my consciousness, if you like, to evolve my soul. And so in everything that happens to me, there's a lesson. Everything, there's a lesson. If I get upset with this person, what am I learning from it? What am I learning from it? What is the soul wanting? So everything is happening for me. So the universe is adoring me and bringing me all that I'm asking for, even if it looks like things that I would not prefer to happen. And that is freedom, to live inside that sponsoring thought.
That's where all the evolutionary growth is too, when you start working with those areas of contraction and constriction. And I'm so with you, but still, because you and I are so, like, this is our thing, this is our gem, we're into all this spiritual growth and the evolutionary growth. But for the person who's like, well, I don't really care about all the soul growth, I just want to get healthy, or I just want to meet my partner, or I just want to, you know, have a nice relationship with my family, or I just want to have whatever, money. And even if they go into, because I've had people, even some of my students, where they go into those bliss states and they learn they can get in there, and then they're like, well, I still don't have the outcome I want, right? Because maybe it didn't come fast enough for them. Because to me, I'm like, you will, if you continue, you will. But what would you say to that, to people like that who just say, well, it hasn't happened fast enough for me, or I still don't have the outcome, or I still don't have what I want, even though I'm learning how to get into a bliss state and I'm staying there more and more. What would you say?
Well, that is the trap of this conversation about creation. Remember when The Secret came out? Like so many memes came out because it went viral. So many memes came out about it, and there was a couple of comedians, just ripping into it here. And like, oh, The Secret says you can have whatever you want. And so they'd go into shops and they'd just take stuff and like stealing. And then they'd say, but The Secret says I can have whatever I want.
I didn't know that, but I haven't. It's so cool to know people
Everything,
like that.
everything you want, you think in the having of it, you will feel good. So, what is it you're really asking for? If somebody says, oh, I meditated and I was in a bliss state, but I still haven't got the lover I want, or the success I want, or the money I want, you're still rooted in illusion that says you are separate from that which you desire. And that which you desire is to feel loved, is to feel united, is to feel connected, is to feel unity in some way, which is who we are as that ultimate truth. When you speak to dead people who've had near-death experiences, or people who've had dead people and people who've had near-death experiences, they are marinating in a realm of pure positive energy. There is no way they could even hope to understand what feeling isolated, lonely, disconnected feels like, because you're living in that ultimate truth of we are all one, we are all source energy. And we come into this contrasting environment called Earth to experience the opposite of that, to learn and grow. And so to overcome every problem that we're looking for, or every manifestation that we think we want, is just to reconnect to that energy. And what is so interesting, when you do reconnect to that energy of feeling that love that is your source, all those desires you want cease to be an important part of your life experience. Like, do I really need the fame and the fortune and the lover and the house and the holidays and the money? Not really, no. No, I don't really need it. And here's the irony of this. When you stop wanting it, it comes to you effortlessly. When you stop needing it, it comes to you effortlessly. Like it just all comes to you when you stop making it an important part of who you are as an identity here on this planet. Like, I need the health, I need the lover, I need the success, I need the money in order to feel like I'm making a difference. I'm important. I'm showing up. I'm on my life journey. I'm doing my soul plan, whatever story we come up with. Yeah.
It is true because at the end of the day, I mean, I remember we had this conversation at the end of our interview last time, and it's so true because I think on your journey as you progress, what you start realizing is that what you're really looking for is deep inner fulfillment. I think,
Right.
and when you start to achieve those states of deep inner fulfillment, which I know that I don't mean to link it to age, but it does for me anyhow. I think in our last conversation, there was something about like the maturity of going through life. You get to some point, at least I think we agreed that we felt this way, but I know I feel this way, that I've reached a point where there's deep inner fulfillment there now, where the external rewards just don't really matter the way they once did. All those things that I thought I wanted, because what I really wanted was deep inner fulfillment. And through that deep inner fulfillment, yeah, those external things just aren't as important. That's how I'm reinterpreting what you're saying. It's like you become,
I think
I
that
really care about
what's
that stuff. No, I just really care about being deeply fulfilled.
what's really interesting is when you're asking for deep inner fulfillment, it doesn't come from achieving your goals. It doesn't come from having the $1 million company, or even from being a spiritual teacher and reaching millions of people and changing everybody's lives. It just doesn't come from that. I saw once a Byron Katie interview, which changed my life. She was talking to a man who had been riddled with cancer, and he was emaciated and he had an eye patch on, and he'd had many operations. They'd taken out his eye. And she was workshopping him and she was saying, what do you want? And he was saying, I want the cancer to go away. And Byron Katie, the work of Byron, like, is it true? can you really know that this is true? Is that really what you want? And obviously, you're looking at a man who's just emaciated, looks like he's about to keel over any minute now, he's about to die. Say, yeah, this is what I want. I want the cancer to go away. And then she asks him to turn it around. Like, do you really want the cancer to go around? Turn it around. I don't want the cancer to go away. Like, why would that make any sense to me? Like, why? And she said, tell me what you've experienced. I'm going to cry. Tell me what you've experienced on your cancer journey. What has your life been like? And he sat and he thought about it and he said, I've never been more present in my life than I had since I've been sick. I've never loved my wife as much since I have during this cancer journey. I've never contemplated life, love, and death so deeply as I have during this cancer. And he just came up with deep inner fulfillment. He just came up with idea after idea after idea that he'd experienced as a cancer patient that was about to die, that he would never have experienced as a successful businessman with a loving family. You know, this deep inner fulfillment that he was asking for came to him through this cancer journey. You know, that was a video that changed my life. It's like what we think we want, we demand that it come through these happy times. But often it's like, be careful what you ask for. Often when you want to deepen your spiritual journey and have that deep inner fulfillment, you might find that it comes through the contrasts or the dramas in your life rather than what's taken away from you, rather than what's given to you. So sometimes, remember I said the guys in prison, like on a frivolous note, I remember watching an Oprah show in my 30s, and she was speaking to one of her designers, and she gave him a limited budget to design a house, to renovate a house, instead of the big budget he was normally used to. And he said something really profound. He said, because I had less money to work with, I had to get much more creative. And I thought, wow, like my creativity expanded when I had less. And I thought, wow. Again, when I was a naturopathic student, I remember hearing something quite profound. They said that your nails grow faster when you cut them, and your hair grows faster when you cut them, because when you cut it, it traumatizes it. And with the trauma comes accelerated growth. And I remember thinking,
it's so true.
right.
So true.
You know, I'm learning about naturopathy, but this profound wisdom is like embedded, is woven through. It's like with the trauma of cutting your nails and cutting your hair, there is accelerated growth. So if you're asking for accelerated growth, be careful what you ask for, because
it's really
like
true. I will tell you, on my journey, have been so many times over the years where I was like, I would look, and I know this will sound like I was comparing, but it's just part of the learning experience of being alive. Like you look in the world and you'd see things, right? I've seen things where I'd be like, how come I can't just have that? Like, what's up with that? Like, how, and I would always get you signed up for very accelerated learning. You wanted to grow and learn as much as you could in this lifetime spiritually. And there's a lot of people in the world who have just, they're basically taking more of a vacation lifetime. And I'd be like, well, that's supposed to make me, that's supposed to make me feel better. And my team would always say that it is such a gift. The more growth, typically, the more trauma someone has taken on, the more pain and suffering, because it allows for the most amount of growth through that contraction. Just like you said, when the hair is cut, it goes through a trauma and then there's accelerated growth. It's so true. And we don't see that as a gift because most of us don't tend to think past this incarnation. But
exactly.
really, as an eternal being, one incarnation, the incarnational experience is where the most growth happens. After you drop the body, you're blissed out most of the time. The lack of the contraction does not allow for as much growth and expansion. And then, so the question I would ask my team, well, what do I care? Then I'll be all blissed out. What do I need? But you don't understand. There's infinite growth, infinite evolution, infinite. You're using the lifetime for all that growth, for all that expansion, because it's going to propel you forward even post incarnation. You have to
Yeah.
think and realize that you're so much more than just the incarnational experience.
I
And
feel like the lifetime that we lead, these lives that we're living, is one chapter in the book of your soul.
yeah,
And when you finish the chapter, you don't finish the book. And so I got to experience this very personally. My mother died when I was 16, which had the curious mind of a teenager. Still in my 60s, I've still got the curious mind of a teenager, asking questions. Where did she go? What happens when you die? Asking more existential questions rather than how can I get what I want? So she reincarnated back as a family member, and she's like in her mid to late 20s. And I have seen her fulfilling desires unfulfilled in that lifetime.
mm,
Even desires that we think are not that important. So she used to brush my hair and say, "Oh, you've got such thin hair. It's like your mother's. It's like my hair. I wish I had thick hair like your father. I hate my hair. You've got my hair." And so she used to torture me. And still today, I don't like people, I don't even like going to the hairdresser, brushing my hair because I sort of remember those torture sessions with mum. And she used to say, I wish I wasn't so tall. I intimidate men, and I wish I had bigger boobs, and I wish this and I wish that. All these desires that she didn't fulfill in that lifetime, she's fulfilled in this lifetime. Like she's got the thickest hair, she's got big boobs, she's shorter. Like she had tall parents, but she then had a spinal problem as a teenager, which stunted her growth a little bit. So because she was about 5'9" as mom, and she's about 5'7" now. And it was so interesting to see the continuation of desires unfulfilled in one life be fulfilled in another life. But what's really interesting for me is that she died young of cancer. So she had the cancer journey. And in this lifetime, she's very into natural health and being fit and healthy and looking after herself, even though she carries weight, but she's into looking after herself. But she still has to address the desires that were birthed from being sick with cancer. She's still addressing those in this life. So there's this constant continuum of lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, the
it's
chapter
true.
of the soul. Yeah, it's really interesting to watch that with someone that you know so intimately.
That's pretty cool that the you have the awareness to be able to see and to recognize the soul progress. Because really it's true. I think a lot of times people don't always realize, like, if you don't resolve something, that's like those are deathbed regrets. Like if you die with some unresolved issues, you're going to carry it with you into your next incarnational experience, whether it's on earth or somewhere else. And
Right.
so it sort of behooves you to do as much inner transformation, personal spiritual growth and transformation as possible. So that, because a lot of times I play this game in my I play this game like, okay, my next lifetime, this is what's going to happen. Like I'm already
Yeah,
planning it. And I have one of my dear friends, he's always like, this is it. A lot of light workers will say that this is it for me. I'm not coming
I
back.
know.
And I think,
I
"No, of
can't wait.
course,
I can't wait to come back. I
that's
can't
how
wait to
I
come back.
feel. It's not that I can't
Yeah,
wait. I'm happy. I'm enjoying this lifetime. I'm grateful for like the gift of this life. But no way am I not planning for the next one. Like
yeah,
there's all the things that I know that I want to have an experience that in this lifetime it's because I've resolved those issues. Like my
yeah,
next parents are going to be like really super conscious, like nature lovers and like, not the contrast that I took on in this lifetime for me to grow and resolve issues along the bloodlines and the ancestral lines, for example,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you
It's
as you become
interesting.
more conscious, you could plan that stuff. You can choose it.
You can plan it and choose it. But interestingly enough, some of the desires, the rockets of desires that Esther Hicks would talk about, the desires that shoot out of you. Like I only had one daughter in this lifetime. So I've often thought, next lifetime I'm going to have a really big family. And then the guide said to me, "You've already done that." And I said, "Oh, how
Right.
come that?" They said, "And when you had that big family, you wish that you didn't have a big family, and that's what you're experiencing. You're experiencing a desire wanted in another lifetime. You're fulfilling in this lifetime." I'm like, right. And then I've had desires like I really love architecture and design, and I have worked as an interior designer, but I love and I'm like, next time I'm going to come back as an architect. I'd love to be an architect. And the guide said, "You've already done that. You've
Mm.
designed churches and cities, and you've designed, you've like as a man, you've been an architect in the past, and you've done." And in that lifetime, you wish that you had more freedom, and you're experiencing that freedom in this. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's interesting. Often when we think we haven't got what we want, and we think, I want that, but I'm not going to achieve that in this lifetime. So next time, we've often already achieved it in some
Yeah.
lifetime.
I totally
It,
get that. Like, because I mean, addiction has been a theme in my lineage, and I've definitely had to play with. It was pretty easy for me, and once I kind of got aligned with my path, you've heard some of my story, like this, the game of addiction just dropped out of my reality for the most part. But it's so funny because as it's been in the lineage, and I've done clearing and healing for where I could for the, the ancestral line, I was taught, why are you judging addiction as a lesser experience? It's not
Right.
even lesser. You're judging it as a lesser experience because you've already resolved it. It's not something you need to play. So you were here to help with it, but it's not a lesser experience. In other words, all the different experiences you can have, in truth, they're not better or worse. They might, from your personality self, be more desirable or less desirable, but they're just experiences. And you think, wow, that's like so fabulous. And at the same time, you're like, okay, well, I'm glad I'm complete with that one, right? Like
Exactly.
they're all just different
Yeah.
experiences, right? And how do you, because it's so cool. We've talked a lot also about past lives, and you were referencing how your guides and your team told you, yeah, you were an architect in a different lifetime. Like, are you in touch with your other lifetimes? Any of your other lifetimes? Do you
Yeah.
know? And talk to people about that, because I have such a vast knowledge of so many of my lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I mean, it's not necessarily required, because the stuff you need in this lifetime, you're gonna know.
It's not required, but it does sort out a lot of, like, as we say, those desires we have in this lifetime. Like when they tell me, you've already done that, you've experienced that. Because sometimes being in that wanting all the time is a place of stress, is a place of suffering. And when you feel like you've already achieved that thing that you want, you can kind of relax and go, oh yeah, been there, done that, wrote it down, ticked it off. I don't know if you achieve that in this lifetime. So there is a place of peace when you can look back and in your book of the soul, and you can see the other chapters that you've lived. But I've been a man more than I've been a woman. I'm getting an image of me. I had a strong image once when I was chatting to the guides about this. I think it was when I was talking to them about being an architect. And I can't remember, maybe somebody said that I had been killed. A boulder had fallen on my head during a construction. Maybe somebody gave me that information. And I went into that past life and I saw myself on this massive stone. And I was an architect, but I was also part of the church. So I was building churches, and I was lying sort of face down on this massive stone, cobblestone sort of floor, sort of speaking to God. And many desires were coming out through me, how to create a church where the people could congregate, where people could understand, where God's voice could be heard, and like all these desires. And it was in that lifetime when we were building this physical structure that I was killed. Some boulder fell on my head and I was killed. And they had shown me how that the desires in that lifetime had followed into this lifetime. And many of the decisions I'm making about who I am as a spiritual teacher, and taking more of a back seat rather than up front, the big guru telling everybody how to live their life, like being a part of the audience and being human and sharing stories with people is a much more potent way of teaching than sort of standing on the stage saying, look at me, I'm fantastic, I'm the guru. Yeah, so it's so interesting to go into your past lives and see how the desires are being fulfilled in this lifetime. And that part about how story teaches. So putting on a podcast show and having people share their stories is a big part of my ministry as a spiritual teacher, is letting people's stories speak to the wisdom. And I find that, with every time I teach, I go into story. I use a story to illustrate what I'm trying to say. For me, when I read the Wayne Dyer books, I read quite a few of his books, and he was very instructive in a lot of his books. Same with Deepak Chopra, right? And I remember reading the Deepak Chopra books and like, yeah, this is my truth. And then trying to remember what that truth was, and like reading the book again and then forgetting, and reading the book again and then forgetting. And so I remember as a young seeker reading all this instructive spiritual stuff and forgetting it when I was in my life and in my drama, completely forgetting it. But when it was wrapped around story, like he experienced that and that's what he did when that happened to him, I could remember it. Like I found that the story made me remember. And like in that drama of my own life, I was like, I remember what Wayne Dyer did when he was hating his father and he forgived his father, how that changed his life. So when I'm in my drama hating my father, if I can find that forgiveness, that will change my life. So yeah, I find that story is the way that I, my ministry in this
Yeah.
lifetime, hence the podcast show that I keep hacking away at for 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah,
A lot of
coming
people
from a
learn that way through
sorry.
story. You're not alone. That's a very, and it's even taught, like even in marketing and business, if you want to help people learn or even sell,
I
sell.
know. I have an acquaintance, a friend, he came to stay with me called Michael Margolis, and he has a marketing business called Get Storied. Have you heard of that? Like he teaches
No,
people how to story to
no.
sell their product, get
Yeah.
storied, he
Yeah.
calls it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, going back to the past lifetimes, one thing and how we experience things, it's like one thing I know about almost all of my lifetimes that I have recollection of. In almost none of them, I wasn't married. Like I have like a Scrooge lifetime. Like I could go through them. It just take a while. I have a lot of lifetimes, and there was almost not one single marriage that I'm aware of. There was one lost at sea lover, and I vowed like never to love again, and I had to clear that vow before I could meet someone again. But so in this lifetime, it's really interesting because there's a whole story about how I met my husband, ex-husband, who was only my husband for a very short window of time. But the whole purpose of him coming in, because we knew each other in other lifetimes and there was love relationship in other lifetimes. Like I have a lot of memories of those. But the whole reason he came in of this lifetime was just to give me the gift of being married so that I could feel fulfilled on that and just get on
Right.
with my business here. And that is what happened. It was just so fascinating because our relationship came in like a whirlwind. It was totally manifested. There was so much sacred contract in it. We were married for like a split second of time. That marriage was what enabled me, at least at that level of consciousness, to get out of corporate America, to make the
Yeah.
shift into the work I was meant to do. And as soon as I did that, he was like, out of here, right?
Yeah.
I never felt a longing again. I remember even after we had later conversations, I was like, yeah, never getting married again. Because it met the need that I had without like interfering with my journey, right? And that's so true. A lot of times that happens. We have some kind of need, but it's not even really that important. Like it wasn't that important in the big
Yeah.
picture, but it was something that the soul just wanted to experience so that she could get on with it. you know, it's so
Fair enough.
it's very cool, right? So
I
when
think that
go
a
ahead.
really important thing that we can do before we leave this chapter is to do a in the body life review. Like we when we listen to near death experiences, many of them have that life review where they review their lives. And I think that their spirit guides give them that so that they can gain perspective and come back into their life with a new perspective on who they are, not just as a soul having a physical lifetime, but also to review the choices they've made and then think again about what choices. But we don't have to have a near-death experience to do that. Like we can view our life, ask to see it from the source perspective, from a higher perspective, and look back on our life and say, what did I gain from that experience? Because often we hold that trauma of this terrible thing happened to me. I was raped, I was abused, I was whatever, ripped off, and I was someone, wasn't honest to me, whatever. And we hold that trauma. But if we can look back on it and say, how did I grow? What was the perspective that I donned about who I am? How did I become stronger? What did I gain from that experience? And do an embodied life review. It's a powerful thing to do before we leave this body that gives us new perspective and the way to move forward. Like, yeah, when I was abandoned, I developed a sense of inner strength that I wouldn't have had if my husband hadn't abandoned me or, had that affair on me or whatever it is that happened that you're still holding trauma on. Like, what did I gain from that? What was the blessing from it? Yeah.
Yes. It's like one of the most important things you can do whenever there's trauma is to seek either the lessons that you are there to learn, the wisdom you're there to claim or gain, or whatever the higher perspectives, that the evolutionary growth that you can gain. Because the whole reason the trauma is there in the first place is because it's holding some kind of gifts of
Yeah.
consciousness for your own growth,
Yeah.
right?
You're going to do it anyway, whether you do it in your body or whether you do it out of your body, you're going to do that anyway. But I had an interesting chat with the guides about this. because I was listening to people talk about afterlife experiences, and somebody had said, everybody goes through a life review. And I asked the guides about that, and they said, no, not everybody. If you're conscious and awake and aware during the time that you're living your physical life, it's not necessary to to have a life review after you leave, because you're already reviewing it in the body, moment by moment by moment. You're already conscious, you're already aware and awake. And I thought that was really interesting. I said, but wouldn't you still want to review it? And I said, yeah, it's your choice. You can still review it if you want to, but it's not a necessary part of dying, because there are many people in that sort of afterlife genre that like, this is what happens because so many NDEs this has happened to. This is like, let's set the rules of like what
Cookie
happens when
cutter.
you die.
Right.
Yeah, cookie cutter. And
Yeah, I completely agree with you, actually. I mean, I never thought of that before, but I do. As you're saying it, it's totally ringing as true. Like, yeah, because if you're a conscious person on a path of consciousness, you're always in review. Like, how am I meant to learn, grow, evolve out of this or from this, or what are the gifts involved in this? And that constant review. And then there's always this kind of like, I feel like I'm complete. I love, bless, honor, forgive. Like I'm at peace with that. I never need to revisit it. It's done and complete in the best ways possible. So you're cleared from that. Like, what do you need to re-review it? Well,
right.
you know what I mean? You're done,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love
I
that.
mean,
I love that.
many of the people say, when they have these life reviews, is they experienced the interaction that the person had from them from their perspective. So they feel what it was like to have had that conversation with you when you were screaming at somebody, you were angry at someone, and you're like you're in the other person's body, feeling that vibration coming at you, and that gives them perspective like they've never had before. Like if we are all unified in one, there is no separation. What I judge, I am, and what you judge, you are. Like there's no separation. There's just this unity. And so you experience this unity on the other side, and then you come back into this illusion of separation, and you can live your life differently. Like
Yeah.
if that is that what it feels like to interact with me, well, then I want to be a different person. I want to be more loving and understanding, and yeah.
But you know
So
what the thing is? I've done that too. Like I've had, in some cases, some relationships that were really difficult, challenging. And I just either couldn't shake the person or like free myself from the dynamics. And eventually, the way that I freed myself was to go into the experience from their perspective. And I could feel
right.
the pain that they were experiencing, and that they, to be fair to myself, that they projected onto me or thought that I did to them.
Yeah.
I can remember a couple cases where I did have to go back into like other lifetimes, like, oh, that was definitely not just from this lifetime. And it was
Yeah.
painful. I mean, it's painful to realize how you've hurt somebody,
Mm.
right? Your actions or your words or your thoughts, regardless of whether you did it intentionally or not. Because maybe I'm saying you, but in this case, I mean me. Maybe I just did not necessarily realize what I said or what I did or how that would trigger or upset them. It's even more brutal when it's someone you love. Like if it's someone you just really don't like and you're just like, okay, there's karmic crap here and I need to free myself. It's been worse the times when I did it with someone like a family member and I realized, wow, I really must have added to their pain. Like it's painful, but it is. You're still doing it while you're alive. So it's not necessarily required after you transition, if
Mm.
you do it to the point where you really make peace and there's forgiveness and love and compassion and understanding and the higher evolutionary perspective of like, oh, I totally get it, we were here to work through this, resolve it. So I love that advance, like you're so great at bringing through that advanced perspective. Like not a lot of people get that, right? You can resolve the issues while you're here. You don't need to necessarily wait till
Absolutely.
you die to resolve these things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
Well,
tell you what, dying really get you gain perspective. I've spoken about this on the show. I've had friends that have disowned me because I'm too crazy or woo-woo for their paradigms, and then they die, and they're like, "Oh, gee, I wish I hadn't have made that decision. It would have been a better." You gain perspective afterwards. Not that you judge yourself for it, because I don't believe that, they talk about in the Bible, they talk about God's judgment, and then people say, when you have the life review, you're judging yourself. I don't think you judge yourself from that perspective. but you do set challenges that you didn't fulfill, and then you're given an opportunity to try again to see if you can fulfill it. Like, I know I can do this. It's not like, oh, I did terrible, but it's like, yeah, I didn't quite achieve what I wanted to achieve, and I know I can, so I'm going to try again. I think that that's the sort of judgment we give ourselves. We don't say, you bad person, you terrible person, you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve. We just go, I know I can do it. I know I
Well,
can do it.
that's a frequency thing too, right? But I know there's still like a couple of things that have happened in my life. It's rare, but where I'll still, if I think back to it, they'll be like, I wish I had these words then, or I wish I knew this then. And that part of me then will
Exactly.
catch myself and be like, okay, I really don't want to recreate it, right? But if the energetic residue is there from the experience, you could potentially recreate it, right? Because you're
But
still,
haven't you ever found yourself in a situation? So you've thought that I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd stood up for myself. I wish I had said these words I didn't say. I wish, I wish, I wish. Like I was just saying on one of the last shows we did, Spirit Speaks, where we were talking to spirit and channeling messages from, dead loved ones and guides. That I was at a funeral recently, and my girlfriend's brother was speaking, and he was speaking about his father, and his father came through very clearly and gave a message to give to him, which I didn't do because I didn't know the brother. We were in a very sort of she environment at the golf club, the expensive golf club, and everyone's in their suits and everything. It was not an environment where you kind of go up and give a psychic message. And I don't even think he believes in any of that. So I had the opportunity to relay a message from spirit, and I didn't do it, right? And I remember thinking, I told my girlfriend the message and I said, please relay it to your brother. And I don't think she did it either. But so I've like, I wish I had done that. But every time I've had that thought, I wish I had have done that. I wish I had have said that. Another experience comes along
yeah,
that will give you that opportunity.
yes.
Like, and
Because
then I was at a, yeah, go on.
you're carrying a regret like that. It'll give you that opportunity. Totally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That you're
You were
never
going to
left
say another
hanging.
experience. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, another funeral came up, and a girlfriend of mine had died, and her twin sister was there. And she gave me a message, and I was talking to her twin sister, who I knew was not a believer. But I blurted out the message, and she didn't receive it well. She said, no, that's not what happened. No, no, she didn't receive it.
Mhm.
Not well. It's just that she challenged me on it. Like, this is what Dada saying to you from spirit. And she didn't believe it at all. So I was given that, opportunity to do it again. And then the fear of being, like, I don't believe you,
Push
because that's
back,
the fear that
push back.
stops you, right?
The
That they're
resistance.
not going to believe me. Yeah, they're going to judge me and not believe me. That fear was realized, and it was still okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's still
Good
okay.
for you. Because
Okay.
when I get messages like that, and this is what I teach in my psychic development classes too, like I always will just say, if I'm meant to give it, give me the opening and make it clear. Otherwise, I'm not pushing what I get on someone else. Like, in a case like that, where you're like, I have this, I'm happy to give it if I'm meant to, if it serves, but you make it clear to me if I'm meant to. Otherwise, I'm not like, it's not up to me to, I'm so psychic. It's not up to me to give everybody everything I get.
Well, yes, you can say that, but your fear can still stop you. I have an experience of this. One time, probably about a decade ago, we have at the beach that I live in a memorial service for the people that died in the Bali bombings, I think back in 2000 or 2002. There was a big bomb blast in Bali. A lot of Australians were killed. A nightclub exploded. So every year they have a memorial service because there's a big plaque of all their names and faces in the beach that I live at. Right. So one year, just out of pure curiosity, I was going to get up early and go to the memorial service. And I went there and I heard one of the fathers speaking, and he so inspired me, such a down to earth Aussie man. And I thought, oh, I want to meet this man. I want him to come on my radio show. It was a radio show at the time, to speak about his experience. And at the memorial service, I was like, I didn't have any relatives or friends that were killed. It was pure curiosity that I was there. And I felt a bit like a gate crasher, even though it was open to anybody. And there were lots of people congregating around him. And I'm saying, will I go up to him and say something? Will I go? No, I won't up. No, he doesn't know me. I don't want to. He's the day of mourning. He's remembering his daughter that was killed, and so all these excuses. And I hovered around him for a while, and I made the decision, I'm going home. And then somebody came up and started talking to me, And I sort of, and they said, would you like to meet this man? And they literally took my arm and took me over to and introduced me to him. And so, yeah, so that was that message from
That
Spirit,
was your
even though,
opening.
yeah, the ego me was like, I'm going home. I'm going to go home and have breakfast. I'm not going to disturb this man. He doesn't know me. He's mourning, all the excuses why I wasn't going to say. And literally someone took my arm and brought me over to him. And I'm like, I was meant to talk to him. So like Spirit
That's your
intervened with
opening.
this other person.
Yeah.
Anyway, he ended up being an author in my book, and his story is so powerful. So Awakened by Death is one of the books that I've put out, which is 12 stories of people having a spiritual awakening through the death experience. And his story is that he was in such grief over his 15-year-old daughter was taken to this nightclub, even though she was 15. She was with a whole lot of other girls and a mother. They really shouldn't have been in the nightclub, but they wanted to experience it, a nightclub in Bali. And they were all killed. All the kids were killed. And his daughter was one of them. And he was in such grief for such a long time that one day he woke up and he said, I can't live like this. I just can't live like this. It just hurts to be alive. And so he made a decision in that moment that every time he had a negative thought, he was going to shift it to a positive thought. And then he became this really happy person. And he said every time he thinks of his daughter, instead of thinking of the tragic way that she died, he would remember her surfing on a wave at Bondi Beach, and he would remember the good times. And I just loved that he didn't so much have a spiritual awakening, but he had made the decision based on the suffering to not suffer anymore. And I found his story so powerful. And I put his story in my book, and everyone that reads my book, one of my clients said she was reading it on the plane and she was crying and snot was coming out of her nose as she was reading his chapter in the book. And
Will you say the name of the book again, Karen?
Awakened by Death, it's called.
Awakened by Death. Yeah, that's
Personal
they get that
stories,
on,
personal
pick it up
stories of
on.
transformation.
Can
So
people
yeah,
pick
you can
that up
pick it
on
up on
Amazon?
Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
And on my website. So and she was a Swedish lady. She was sitting there reading his book, crying, and this person in the seat next to her said, are you all right? And she looked at him, she said, oh yeah, I'm fantastic, because she was enjoying it, but it was tragic at the same time. But she was like when you're watching a really good movie and you get really emotionally involved and you cry, and you don't want people to sort of take you out of your misery because you're enjoying the story. And yeah, I love that she wrote that to me, that the person was so concerned. Can I help you in any way? She said, no, it's just such a good book. She said snot was pouring out of her nose. But his story is really powerful. I've often seen his story being made into a movie. I'd love to see it made into a movie because it's an amazing story. Yeah. So interesting.
You were
I was
meant to
going
share that. You were meant to be, clearly.
Yeah, I was going to go home and have breakfast that day. I made a decision. No, I'm not going to disturb this man. And then someone
But I
intervened.
do want to say though about that, because sometimes, I mean, you do have to walk the line, because see, for you, the way you expressed it is sometimes it's a fear that stops you. It was never for me that. It was more like, is it me intruding on someone else's free will choice to give them some kind of unsolicited, psychic reading? Because, I've had people do that to me, like, and sometimes when I had it, I don't have it anymore at all, but I remember in the earlier stages of awakening, it was like the thing, like, oh, I got a little message for you. And sometimes I'd just be like it was an eye roll, because I just felt like I didn't ask you for it. You don't know me. Like, I didn't invite it. Like, I think there's a free will element there that we do as psychics, as healers. I think that's important too. Like, one of the things that I was taught by my own team is to be mindful of unsolicited requests. So it wasn't for me so much ever like a fear. It was more like being respectful of someone's right. So it was always more like, source, creator, God, I'm giving something, or guides, if I'm meant to give it. I just think that's important. It's a line. Like in that case, you were meant to make that connection clearly.
Yeah.
And just
We have free will to give it, and we have free will to receive it. I mean, I've heard of many stories of psychics sitting next to people on a plane. I mean, there's a whole show that was made called The Backseat. No, there was a guy that was put in a taxi, and people get into the taxi, and he says,
Yeah,
I'm a psychic, I'm going to give you a reading. And these poor
right.
unsuspecting people get a psychic reading and it changes their life. There's a whole show about it. But
Yeah, I remember that show. But actually, that show was dropped. It didn't even make it. It was dropped. But
No, it was really famous. I watched a lot of episodes.
But maybe in
Yeah, no,
Australia. In
oh,
the
it's an
United States,
American. It's an American show.
yeah,
Anyway, but yeah, backseat
Thomas John,
psychic,
that was his name.
seatbelt psychic. I think they
Yeah,
called him the
taxi
seatbelt
cab
psychic.
psychic, I thought.
Taxi cab. Anyway, but I met a man once at a pub years ago that would do that. He'd get drunk at the pub and give everyone psychic readings. And I said the same to him. I said, you ask them if they want the reading? He goes, no, 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 I just give it to them. I just give it to them. And I was a little upset about it too. It's like sometimes it's not appropriate just to give it to them. But then, whatever happens to you was no coincidence. If somebody bumps into you and gives you a psychic reading at a pub, drunk at a pub or on a plane or whatever, it's like you've been led to that. And there is free will choice to listen to that or not listen to it. You can say, I didn't ask for this, mind your own business. Or you can say, thank you so much. Like we have free will to give it and to receive it. To give it and to receive it.
But I will say, well, like recently I remember I was actually in this, YMCA in North Carolina while I was traveling in the Black Hills, Black Mountain. And so I'm in this jacuzzi and this guy's like talking about his physical, he had to get a breathing apparatus. He couldn't breathe. He was snoring while he was asleep. I'm listening to him for 10 minutes and I'm like, I can really offer him some insight here. Should I say something or not? Like, how long do you want me to sit and listen to this? Or like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
So I was told, well, just to ask him. So, all right. So I said to him, would you like some insight on that? Like I'm an energy worker and you want to hear about the mind body connection of it. And he was like all yeses. Yeah, I'm open. I'm in. Okay. So I offered to me, completely shut me down. It was the walls came right up right after the yes. And I was like, this is energetic. Like I could care less about giving it to you if you're not into it. Like I don't need to give that to you. And the wall of the no and the skepticism and the cynicism came up and it feels so bad. Like it's not like my personality self is insulted. It's more like it's your problem. You're living with that issue. I could have given you something, but you're so walled up because snoring is all about stubborn refusal anyway. Right? Snoring is.
I must be pretty stubborn. I wake myself up snoring.
You do? Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stubborn person at all.
I was like, oh, I'm snoring.
Well, he had
luckily there's no one next to me.
Okay, he was like not being able to breathe in his sleep. But in any case, the energy of the resistance feels so bad. At that point, I'm like, oh, no problem, no problem. I just want to get away from the guy because he just felt so bad to me. Like I'm like, so there's that too, because there is something to be said about like, you want to feel good. You're happy to help someone. I'm saying you, in this case, I mean me. Like I'm happy to offer and help, but at the same time, if it's going to make me feel worse, I don't need to give you that gift of consciousness. Like if you're not willing to receive it. And I did ask permission. Like I did ask him, I'm into the mind body. Do you want to hear it? And he said yes, but then boom, the moment it disagreed with what
not everyone's going to,
they're just navigating. Yeah, it's like
I had that recently with someone I've had on the show. I went to see her and her husband died and we had a great day together and I asked her a lot of questions and I said, why do you think he's died now? And she said, well, it's time for me to get back into the work I came to do because they'd been living for 20 years as husband and wife and tending a garden and a family and everything. And so I offered her ways at which she could do that. And she became bad at me with all this resistance. Oh, but I might not be well that day. Oh, but I've got to tend to the garden. All these excuses why she couldn't, I offered her a way to get back out there and she was resisting me. So I was driving home and I'm thinking, why is she resisting me? I didn't take it as an insult. I just like, why? And they said, fear. As of what she's afraid of. She's afraid of, the next chapter, the new paradigm. It's like you've got to sort of ease her into it because she's seen herself in this capacity for 20 years and now she's moving into a new identity and what she's afraid she's going to lose her pension, she's going to lose her friends, she's going to lose this, she's going to lose that. There's all of this. If I change, like everything, I've kept everything in place with this paradigm, these beliefs, these thought forms for so long. If I change, will I lose what I've created? And they were just saying, be gentle with her. She's just in fear. But rather than being like, I'm offering this, like I charge people for this work and I'm offering to help you. And I haven't actually said I'm going to charge you and you're resisting me. Like I could go into ego about it. Or talking to the guides, they said, just be gentle with her, just be gentle. And so I've just sort of held back and I just said, just call me when you're ready and we'll look at it. If the fear overtakes her and she doesn't do it, then she doesn't do it, Okay. But
Well, see,
yeah, I know.
that's so beautiful.
I know.
You kind of like extended the opening and let it be
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
choice, right? That's lovely.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all we can do. We can offer our help, whether it's paid or unpaid. And people have the choice to receive it or not to receive it. But it has nothing to do, back to the crazy landlord and the guru, it has nothing to do with how people respond to us. It has nothing to do with who we are. It has everything to do with the fear that they are holding, the beliefs that they are holding. And when you understand that as a human being, when we understand that as human beings, that how people react and respond to you is based purely on their sponsoring, their foundational belief system, and nothing to do with who you are, what you're offering, then you're free. As a human being, we're free. I remember years ago when I was young, girlfriend had broken up with a boy. A boy had rejected her. And I was trying to get this message over to her. Even though I had the message, I probably wasn't living that at the time. It's like him rejecting you has nothing to do with who you are. You're still a beautiful, gorgeous, creative person. Because she was beating up, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he love me? What's wrong with me? Why did he reject me? It's such a human experience, right? We get rejected by a lover or a friend and we make it all about us. But I was trying to get that message across to deaf ears, sitting in a bar one night.
It's so true.
She's crying in her drink and I'm trying to comfort her. And the guidance was coming through. Again, wisdom flows through me. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was living it at the time, but it was flowing through and it wasn't landing. I mean, she wasn't hearing it, but it was still coming.
But that's such a good message. Like everybody could hear that right now. Like someone else's inability or incapacity to love or accept you does not define your lovability.
Right.
Does
Absolutely.
not define your worthiness, does not define your deservability. You're lovable.
And it doesn't speak to who you are. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't speak to who you are. And I'm so glad you shared that, Karen, because it's such a beautiful to say. And for people.
Well, darling, this has been fun. We should do this more often.
I love you. Like and I was like, oh, my podcasts are usually pretty short, but you and I were like, you were like, oh yeah, but they've got these really long ones now. And I was like, all right, we'll just go as long as we go. But
I know.
you and I have been on for this connection much longer even than the podcast. So I'm going to let you go, but do you want to wrap up? Do you want to share anything before we wrap? Like, so say your website, which is your
karenswain.com.
And say again the name of your podcast.
Accentuate. I tell you what I've done in the last couple of weeks. I've started a new YouTube channel because I don't advertise on my YouTube channel. It doesn't really matter now because I'm on the network, but I'm still fighting the algorithms of YouTube. Basically, if you don't engage in making money, you're not making money for YouTube, you're not making money for you. They just don't show your video. So I went from 60,000 views to a couple of 100,000 views on my shows. And I went from having 500 to 1,000 new subscribers a month down to none, and going backwards. It's like, so I started a new channel, just uploading shorts and clips from the long form shows on a brand new channel. And it's called ATP Media Clips. And so I've only got like 30 subscribers on there now. But so there's like little, under a minute clips where you can get a little idea of what you want to listen to. And then there's like 10 minute shorts. It's something I'm endeavoring to do. And I was going to monetize that platform. Mind you, on shorts, you don't really see the ads as much as on the long form. Because, sitting through a conversation with somebody and you've got to sit through all these ads, Kentucky Fried Insurance ads, car ads, someone mid-sentence is interrupted by 3 ads on YouTube now. I find that frustrating, right? I sit through it, but I find it frustrating. And so I chose not to do it on my channel, and I've been penalized for it. So I've started a new channel and I'm going to monetize that channel, and I'm just going to see if it makes a difference with the amount of subscribers and views I get. I'm having a little experiment with myself with YouTube. So I've got 2 channels now. So one is called Karen Swain Blissful Beings, which is the name that I gave my guides, Blissful Beings. which is where all the long form shows are. And then the other one is called ATP Media Clips. Yeah.
I've watched, in addition to being a guest on your show more than once, I've watched quite a few of the videos. Just, you're a great interviewer. Like you definitely allow for, this open kind of conversation. And when it flows like that, it's really, you draw the listener, the watcher in. So it's a great,
cool. Thanks
great
for that. Yeah. You were saying that you were listening to me and Penny Kelly. I love Penny. I haven't had Penny on for ages, but we had some great conversations.
Those were some good ones.
She blew my mind. You know how you said, because I've been speaking with so many people for such a long time. There are a few people that really blow my mind. And as I said, I reached back out to you because I really loved our conversation. Yeah, because I just think, you hear it over and over and over again. But Penny Kelly was one of those conversations I had.
Yeah, that was a good
some
one.
of her experiences, I'm like, seeing her parallel selves. And she said that she didn't sleep for 3 years because she had that stream of consciousness, awake, asleep. There was complete memory. There was no veil of illusion. So when her body would fall asleep, she was still, awake like we all are. But she'd wake up in her body in the morning and she would have that continuum of consciousness where she didn't feel like she was awake or asleep, and she used to sit on her roof and think, well, what'll I do while my body's asleep? Some ETs came and took her to the planet.
I don't think I heard that one. I listened to 2 of them with her. So
Yeah.
go back. Your interviews are really good. You have some really good ones on there. So definitely for people to go check that out. Check out your.
But to wrap this up, I think that, look at the sponsoring thought. So when you're upset, ask yourself, what am I believing that is creating this upset? Like, what is the truth that I'm believing? And that's how you can find that sponsoring thought. Life is unfair. I never get what I want. I'm unlovable. We come up with all these ideas, but underneath all those foundational sponsoring thoughts is this one thought, and that I am separate to love. I'm separate to God. So if you can work on feeling that connection to
or not only I'm separate, but I'm incapable of being at one with that thing that I want or that experience that I want.
Yeah. And again, asking yourself the question every time you feel upset that you're not getting what you want, what is it that I'm looking for? Because it's not the house or the lover or the money or the success. It's the feeling. What is the feeling, and where do I have that feeling in my life? Like, what can I focus on? What can I think about that evokes that feeling of fulfillment, success, that feeling like, where have I felt fulfilled? Where have I felt successful in my life? How can I feel like, just evoking that frequency of what you're looking for rather than feeling the emptiness of not having it. Like, that is what it is to be a powerful, deliberate, a genius, deliberate creator. I am creating the frequency in my body, not the circumstances of my life, the frequency of my body. The universe is handling the details, but I'm creating that frequency and work on that sponsoring thought, because ultimately that's what's creating your life, regardless of getting upset or frustrated or angry or critical. Those sponsoring thoughts, those foundational thoughts is what is creating your life. Thanks, honey one. Love you big time. Great.
Oh my God. I love you too so much. You're just such an amazing being. And it's so fun to connect with you on a sister level, and just having this. Oh my God. We've been going for like 4 hours now. So
I know it's been a while.
All right. So we're going to sign off for now, but we're going to get this up on the YouTube channel. And I just want to thank you so much, Karen, for being here and for being the magnificent you that you are. You truly are magnificent. All right. We're going to sign off for now. Saying farewell.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.